Welcome to the new episode of The True Heart of Love. In the last episode, Debbie's betrayal shattered Andrew's trust. One night, he caught her in an intimate embrace with another man, leaving him devastated. Despite Debbie's tearful pleas, Andrew decided to sever their connection. Kelvin, feeling guilty for introducing Debbie to Andrew, apologized. Andrew withdrew from social interactions, reflecting on whether he could ever open his heart again after such betrayal. Debbie, desperate and regretful, begged for forgiveness, but Andrew remained unmoved. He vowed to move forward, leaving Debbie torn between love and regret. Kelvin, too, felt remorse and apologized to Andrew. As days turned into weeks, Andrew sought solace in work and routines, pondering whether his heart could ever heal. Andrew's heart remained encased in hurt. Could he find forgiveness, or had Debbie's betrayal closed it off forever? Only time would reveal the answer to this painful question. Stay tuned for this new episode, where we dive deep into the story of the true heart of love.
A university encounter. Janet's days at the university were a delicate dance between lecture halls and library stacks. While her classmates fluttered around Johnson, drawn by his wealth and charisma, Janet remained an enigma. Her brilliance was her armor, deflecting his advances with icy precision. She had seen glimpses of his darker side, the way he berated a struggling classmate, the disdain in his eyes when someone dared to challenge him. But Johnson was relentless. He sought her out during breaks, his silver tongue weaving compliments and promises. "You're different," he'd say, leaning against the marble pillar outside the lecture hall. "Not like the others." Janet would raise an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Different doesn't mean interested," she'd reply, her tone as sharp as the crease in her textbook. Yet, there were moments when Johnson's facade cracked. Late nights in the library, when the fluorescent lights flickered, he'd sit across from her, frustration etching lines on his face. "Why won't you give me a chance?" he'd ask, his voice raw. "I could make your life easier." Janet's gaze would linger on the worn pages of her notes. "My life isn't for sale," she'd say quietly. "And it certainly isn't defined by your wealth." Caroline, her loyal friend, watched the tug-of-war between them. "Janet," she'd whisper, "maybe you should reconsider. Johnson could open doors for you." But Janet shook her head. Poverty was her companion, but it was a familiar one. She'd seen too many women lose themselves in the glittering promises of men like Johnson. She'd rather scrape by, fueled by her own determination, than compromise her principles. And so, the university corridors witnessed their silent battle, Janet, the brilliant underdog, and Johnson, the entitled heir. Their clash was more than personal, it was a collision of worlds. Janet's textbooks stacked against Johnson's designer suits. Her resilience against his arrogance. As the semester wore on, Janet wondered if she was fighting a losing battle. But deep down, she knew that some battles were worth waging, even if victory seemed elusive. For in her unwavering refusal lay a quiet rebellion, a refusal to be just another footnote in Johnson's privileged narrative. And so, she continued to walk past his Mercedes-Benz, her steps echoing with purpose. Poverty might cling to her like a shadow, but integrity was her shield. And in that quiet defiance, Janet found a strength that transcended wealth and status. The threat. One evening after class, Johnson approached Janet and threatened that he would make her suffer if she didn't sleep with him. Janet boldly refused, telling him, "You cannot intimidate me because you are rich." The moon hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the deserted campus. Janet's footsteps echoed as she hurried toward her dormitory, the weight of Johnson's threat still fresh in her mind. She had always known he was dangerous, but this was a new level of malevolence. Caroline's warning had been cryptic yet urgent. "Janet," she'd whispered, her eyes darting around the dimly lit corridor, "Johnson isn't just arrogant, he's ruthless. Be careful." And so, when Johnson's men materialized from the darkness, Janet's pulse quickened. Their eyes bore into her, devoid of empathy. She knew their purpose, to drag her to Johnson, to fulfill his twisted desires. But Janet was no damsel in distress. She had her wits and a resolve.